You're live. Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am hanging out with this nerd.
Anarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Pretty fantastic for a start of the week. It's off to an awesome start, and I'm happy to be hanging out with you here tonight to talk about D&D ideas.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm having a pretty good day myself. I got a couple craft projects that are, moving along in the queue. I got to do some 3 days in a row of doing some geocaches with the family.
You're really getting into those a lot more, huh?
Yeah, I mean it's super a lot of fun. It gets us out
Sure.
active, and given all of the health issues, it's something that you can do that's free,
Mm-hmm.
and you can still do social distancing.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, it's all exercise and fun and keeps the brain
Exploring
engaged.
your world.
So, like right now, and this is not totally trying to sell everyone on geocaching, but like right now, they started a new event of finding the wonders of the world. So like there's 14 objects to find, hidden amongst the quote unquote caches that are out there, and it's just like, all right, we want to do this as fast as possible. So it's silly, it's fun.
Yeah. Hey, this isn't the topic for this evening, but exploration is one of my favorite things to talk about in D&D and other games. And just even that premise you said right there, it's like, hey, you want more exploration in your game? Just make that the campaign. It's like it doesn't have to be like this great evil you're out to defeat. I mean, there'd probably be dangerous beasts and things along the way, but like just make that the thrust of your campaign. They're just people. I mean, there's people that live in the world that aren't like hunting liches and stuff constantly. You know what I
That
mean?
is that is true. And Fragginator, no, there were no dangerous bee attacks this time. No dozen stings across my back. We survived this one.
Interestingly enough, two people that my girlfriend knows were also stung multiple times by a swarm of bees that same day as you last week, Ted.
Wow, Sunday was
Yeah.
apparently not a good day for being outside.
Yeah.
But we've gone on tonight. We're supposed to be talking about fast and fun combat, and I know I came loaded to bear with a couple different ideas to talk about. Do you want to start it off, or do you want me to start it off?
I'll start off, sure. So, I went back to the well because this topic is one that you and Dave talked about on the old Saturday Quests and Adventures
Mhm.
live chats. And since those had no awesome newsletter support like our awesome newsletter does these days, we're going through those topics slowly. And it was interesting. So there's a lot of good ideas. Of course, there's a lot of chat questions because that's how we do it. And I was there while you were filming that one. It was back in 2018, so it was cool. But I noticed those are can be combined, but they are sort of two distinct things, like fast ways to make combat faster, way to make it more fun, and then some ways to make it both fast and fun. So I was kind of approaching it from that angle. So to start off, I'll just start at the beginning with fast. And both you guys said something pretty succinct, I thought, in that video, which was know when the combat is over, right? And that's more to do with like pacing and things like that, where, sometimes it's just a slog. Like if the big bad evil creature is defeated and there's just some minions, it's like, oh, okay, like that's just kind of boring, frankly, really, if it just slogs on for like 4 or 5 more rounds.
It
So
really
just knowing when it's over and just,
it comes to the point that as a DM, there are times you have to say hand wave, and you guys wrap this up. Unless
maybe
the
even ask the players.
unless the players are super into, now I want to roll this out, give them that option. Catch
Sure.
say, hey, you guys have this from here. Do you want to roll it, or do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
And that does definitely speed up the game.
Yeah, and maybe even ask the players to, sort of paint the scene with you. Like, well, how would you guys like just clean up these last, straggling like zombies or whatever?
That works for me. I
Mm-hmm.
know I've done, with me having previously run the RPG Crate game,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only
Did you
thing
do
that
that and that sort of thing to move things along ever?
I have.
Okay.
I know with those games, I've run it a variety of different ways throughout the years, trying to provide that material, and it's really the only thing that I've done to any lengthy degree where I'm running prepared material. Most
Sure.
of the time, it is my stuff. So I'm like, oh well, if I want to add in some more combat, knowing that we only have a certain block of time, that the players are interested in running, that we want to keep the viewership, so it's supposed to be, fun, fast paced, and what have you. So I've done things where, all right, what if we just did this? And you can have someone, roll, roll a d20. What is, represent your combat modifier if you want to use, Pathfinder or 3.5 terms. What is your proficiency modifier and whatever your prime stat is that you would be doing? What does that look like? How did you perform this battle? And you've got the capacity to say, all right, this is what this is. Just like anything else in D&D, you can set a DC. If you meet or exceed that, you did well. If you overachieve, you've got the capacity to say, all right, maybe you went through that battle unscathed or took less damage, but like you can treat a combat as if it was a hazard or a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And once you narrate, all right, player A, you took 4 damage. Player B, you didn't roll as well. You took 8 damage. And player C, you rolled off the charts. You didn't take any damage. Now, narrate what you did in that battle. You've got the ability to, still give them the agency, still give them the victory, but you've got the capacity to have that combat be boiled down to nothing more than a hassle.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like that you mentioned that because as we talk about a lot, and I mention a lot, like I'm always just sort of flipping through the DMG for research or whether it's for a video or a post or just out of curiosity. Excuse me, and maybe this is just reading too much into it, or because they don't really push this angle of it. But remember how fifth edition is supposed to be very modular, right? Like that, we heard that word a lot in the early days, and people still talk about that. And to your point, even something like the resolving social interactions stuff in the DMG, could be a basis for doing combat instead. I mean, it has sort of this similar qualities. It's like, are they really hostile? Are they indifferent towards you, or are they just like, seemingly peaceful creatures? And just to get a gauge of it, because it has DCs, if you needed some guidance on that. It's like, okay, well, we're just passing through, but these things seem hostile, so the DC would probably be like 20 because it's very challenging, right? So, you can kind of like, if you step back, from a meta sense of the game system, there is a lot of chunks that you can just take and make things faster, and in the same way with social encounters, taking, the combat rules and making them more chunky, if you like.
And the other thing to look at when you're looking at it from this particular perspective, we joke all the time about how long combat takes.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 18 to 30 seconds, and it takes 45 minutes to 3 hours.
Yeah, right.
Imagine if we just did combat as a 3-round hazard. We're going to boil this down to 1 to 3 D20 rolls that all get done simultaneous. If you have a problem with keeping players' interest at the table, and they're more interested in role playing than going through the combat, maybe you're playing with young kids and all you want to deal with is that D20 roll. You can use all of your extraneous, spells to and class abilities for exploration, enhancing your the combat, dealing with social situations, dealing with puzzles. It really gives you the capacity to take this game and move it in a much more intense, fast-paced environment with just making that modification. Now, there's some players that I feel are really going to like bucking like, what do you mean we don't have to roll initiative? What do you mean we don't have to play
Right.
this out and do all this tactical stuff? Believe me, I love miniatures. I love, putting things out. I love really, haunting the players with all the different things that can happen on the battlefield. But if that's not what the game you're looking for, there are other alternatives out there. And this is just, an idea that I've had, going for a
Sure.
while. I mentioned it probably in that last Quest and Adventures. I ran a game back in 3.5 that combat was entirely narrated. The game was only ever using a D20, and all the players loved it. So it's definitely.
Is that the one you didn't get to finish and you're regretful?
No. This is the one that was the first campaign that I ever completely ran to completion. This was my Tribe of One game.
Okay.
It was fantastic. It was the first thing that I ever saw D&D being a spectator sport. Because people showed up to watch it.
Yeah. So a lot of these ideas are interesting because, they might seem like drastic changes to a game, or you should play another game. And, from one way of looking at it, I always just assume like, well, and D&D is sort of like a brand generic in a sense of just like, I'm not going to say, hey, Ted, do you want to come over and play on Saturday? Because that's, like children do, right? But if you have some excuse, like a thing you're doing,
right,
then it's a framework for that. So, and we play with a lot of different people. So it's fun to try out different, ways of playing and just see how they go. And like, we interact with people online all the time that combat, and I'll be the first person to say, like, it's a game about fighting monsters and getting treasure primarily. But if you feel comfortable playing D&D and, just like you said, like just narrating the combat using a few dice rolls, like maybe, all those times when we use examples like, when players say, I want to like leap off the table and chop their head off and stuff. Maybe you would just want to run your game like that and make it really fast, and that's just an athletics roll. Or right. Like if a wizard wants to like use magic to do something that isn't exactly a spell, it's just an arcana roll. Again, and you can just either have a DC or it opposed by something from the other creature or whatever, and that would make it certainly go fast. But yeah, speaking of fast, yeah, it does crack me up how quickly the actual combat is. Although I always cite that movie The Equalizer with Denzel Washington, where it's like, okay, that portrays it pretty good. Like, sure, 30 seconds, a lot can happen.
Yeah.
Between like skilled combatants, you know what I mean? Like whether you're moving and hitting multiple people or whatever.
And I mean, you can watch, a number of different, movies or TV shows where you have a legitimately skilled actor, actress, portraying what's going on. And it can be really amazing. And, when you start looking at, Bruce Lee or Jet Li that move with such supreme skill and grace that it's like, okay, we're talking beyond like,
Yeah, and those are just like human people, and they don't have, mystical powers and, totem spirits inhabiting their bodies and stuff,
like,
right?
You've got normal humans in our world that are far and above, what you expect to see on low-level guys. Like those guys were, top of the chart. So like,
hey, based on strength score alone, even a creature in the D&D universe with 3 strength ain't that weak, right? As we learned in one of our upcoming videos.
Oh God, that
was pretty funny.
Wow. Yeah, that was kind of incredible, and it makes me feel I can't really pull my own weight.
Yeah. So we did have a question in the chat from Joe Silent. It said, have you ever done a total random campaign? And enthusiastically, yes, I love that. And especially after having played role-playing games in D&D for so long, it's almost like a refreshing and sort of like a free pass to just do crazy stuff, right? Because like sometimes when I'm trying to like develop a campaign, you get caught up on the words like, oh, is this going to make sense? Or, why would they be here or there? But like I just was planning out a campaign recently for another game, but it's fantasy like, and part of planning an adventure is just sort of this sheet of ad libs that you just fill in things, and they have random answers for that. And it's just like the story begins on like a moon of the planet blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, and it's like I would have thought like, oh, I need to have this like really complicated reason why and blah 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 for it to make sense. But it's refreshing when you just roll random. It's like, sure, it's on a moon, and like there's danger in the chasm of like Clodupe or something like that. It was the other answer. I'm like, sure, I'm just going to run with this. It's fun.
I know.
And then when you fill in the connective tissue, that's where you get like the fun, creative part for you.
I know that back in the very beginning of when the DMG was released, Nate had rolled up a random PC, and he turned that into basically an entirely random game, using that particular villain. Used heavily on the random roll charts and this and that. Some of the bizarre treasure that he got wound up having, a sword that did bludgeoning damage, and
that's in one of our products. I think it's in
it was
in Mage Forge Volume 2.
It was originally created by Nate.
Oh, that's cool.
Way back when. So all of this stuff just all came from this just completely utterly random game. I am not like that, but then you could say that a lot of my campaigns kind of go random because things are just sometimes pulled pulled out of the ether while I'm running.
And to be fair, that sort of is the same thing though, right? Because it's like we are exposed to a lot of RPG stuff, doing Nerdarchy and stuff. So when you do think of those, it's sort of like a random generator in your brain, right? I mean, you just might have remembered like, oh yeah, that thing I read in, Court of the Shadow Fae or whatever book that I was flipping through the other day. So that's fair. I'd say that's and like you said, you're doing it at the table, so that's random in a different way, I suppose, than a chart. I mean, you are just sort of, and Dave's like that too, where you just like, well, based on where the players go and what they seem interested in.
And to me, and I've said this, all the time, like I look at everything that I'm doing. When I watch a TV show, when I'm out going for a walk, I am sometimes taking in what I'm seeing and say, how can this be used for D&D? Mm-hmm. If I'm out just going for a walk and there's nothing out there, where does my brain wander to? So there's always things, flying. My brain is very much heavily geared on that D&D side.
Well, here's another way of doing a random campaign that's adjacent to those that I was just thinking of. And this is kind of what I do too. Like I'll have a starting premise, right? And I might find like a map or something that I think, okay, this is a cool like adventure location. I can describe these rooms to them and throw some monsters in there. And from there, it's pretty random. I would say even if I was going to run like Tomb of Annihilation and, I was playing and the players just like didn't have any interest in the Death Curse or whatever, I would probably just look at other adventures, look up, see if I can find something that's in a jungle, and then probably just adapt that to the characters in the campaign. I do that a lot. When we most of the times I've played with you when I ran games was like that. We're like, sometimes it's just an adventure that I remembered like from an MMO or something. It's just like, okay, I could weave their characters into this. So a lot of it's random. Yeah, I guess spoiler alert, a lot of DMing is random. And the players do so much heavy lifting. I mean, just based on what they're interested in and the choices they make. I mean, that's
that for our style. When you look at the way a lot of people DM, there are a lot of DMs who will pour heavily over notes, spend a lot of time doing prep, and they're ready for, whatever direction the players decide to go.
Which is really fun too.
We're not saying any style is right or wrong.
Sure.
That's not the way Nerdarchy tends to do things.
No.
I'm a middle of the line prepper these days. Mm-hmm. I am creating some things to have ahead of time that I suspect the players are going to do, and then I run random things as they come up based on player's choice. I'm going to sideline and handle Crazy Hermit DM's question.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that as well.
So yes, I think the super narrative fast combat system would be spectacular for a simple game.
Would really help mitigate like taking damage and stuff like that. Right. Where it's just like so
you've got the capacity to every time combat is going to happen to know what happens if things go poorly. So again, in that Tribe of One game that I ran, for those who didn't hear me talk about this before, I'll tell you. For those who have seen it, seen me talk about it numerous times, I apologize. But I had it. It's based off of the Dark Sun novels Tribe of One, where you had one person's mind who was fragmented into all of these different personalities. So it legitimately was one body going on a quest, and then every player was a personality in the dude's head. So if the body dies, game over, man. Sorry. And I had rules for how everybody interacted and who was in the room and whatever have you. But I had to be aware of what would happen if somebody messed up bad. And there was a combat where they were against this, lion-esque creature, and the ranger-esque type personality was very savage. He's like, I want to kill it, I want to skin it, I want to wear that hide. And I'm like, all right, make a roll. Totally rolled a natural one. The thing hurt him, it pounced, and it was biting into his jugular, and he was bleeding out. And it's like, all right, how are you going to handle this? And if one of the other personalities didn't step up and take care of things, it could have gone very poorly. But from a narration standpoint, you can't really go down that road, because unless you're running that odd style game, you're gonna have to have another solution. Mm-hmm. So in these situations, you would want to talk to that person and say, look, okay, combat, you need to be aware of what is feasible and what is not, because if it's just you and you roll poorly against something that is significantly more powerful than you, what are the consequences? Mm-hmm. So you have the
you could also make fleeing much easier too, and be like, I'm gonna dash, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, just make an athletics check, and it's like, you maintain your pace, you get ahead, you're gone.
Right.
This, levels of success.
So you have to have more options of being taken out and captured or hauled back to a lair. Maybe the wolf that quote unquote killed you drug you back to its lair, and it's waiting to for its mate to come back, and you'll eat together. All right, well, now's the chance for you to use that hit die during a short rest. You can recover and try to sneak out or do whatever. But if you've got ideas ahead of time for every type of encounter of what could you do, how could this go, if things go poorly, it requires a little bit more planning, but it definitely offers that perfect narrative story and keeps things moving and keeps things character centric. You don't want Mr. Super NPC comes in and kills the monster, heals you, and goes about its day every single time the dice go poorly. You want it to be about that character's successes and failures.
Yeah, maybe you let them make medicine checks to heal themselves if they're doing rest. Yeah, I think for a one character game, that'd be a lot of fun. In fact, I think that's a great topic that it has a very high probability of being a video, post, or some sort of product, or all three. So thanks, Crazy Hermit DM. Joe Silo had a great comment. What about random Ravenloft? Absolutely. I mean, it even works narratively, because Stroud really doesn't care what you do when you're there, So, and the random encounters, when you're just wandering the lands of Barovia, because you think, sure, it's a valley. We're talking people on foot, and a small valley of hundreds of square miles is a lot of space. So there's a lot of room for things to happen. And, the random encounters in there, I'll pull it up real quick. They're not super detailed or anything, but they're evocative enough, and they're not all combat. Sometimes you just find a cache of like clothes and stuff that belong to like a were raven, the Order of the Feather or something like that. So if with player buy-in, thinking they might want to go find like, can we find who's this belongs to, right? Could be a lot of fun. I mean, essentially, it is sort of random, right? I mean, even where the things, I know you don't run them. I have run and played parts of it. But even like where the sun sword and the icon of Ravenloft and the symbol of Ravenkind are random, and you have to just go wandering around doing stuff until you find them.
Me personally, I've never been a huge Ravenloft fan. Not every setting is for every particular player. I've known many who are super into it. I've never played in Ravenloft. I was in Ravenloft for a little while, but that was in a very early days of D&D where we were very plain.
Second edition?
Definitely second edition.
Oh, back when there was tons of domains of dread and all the different lords.
I mean, beyond. Like, we were in Dark Sun, we were in Ravenloft, we were in the Primus.
Yeah, we did that stuff too. Sure, man, we got all the box sets. It's like, let's try this one.
All of the places that you're not supposed to be able to get into and out of easily. Yeah,
Pish Pash.
And that was a game that both Nate and I played in. It was weird. I was the good guy, Nate was the neutral guy, and our friend Nick was the evil guy. And Nick and I were always at odds, and we were always trying to kill each other. Nate's character would always come, and whoever died, he'd be the one to bring them back. So it was.
Those books had the most awesome black and white like illustrations back then. They were so moody. All those just little sketches in the margins and things, and all the different lords and monsters. Yeah, oh my gosh.
I was definitely far more drawn to Dark Sun. That was my thing.
Yeah. So we talked about fast combat. We answered a bunch of questions. We can move on to the fun part of combat. And my point for that was to have a point, even and what we're just talking about, even when they're random encounters, to just have some purpose. And sometimes that's an in-game purpose, and sometimes it's a meta purpose. Like if there's just, I've said it 1,000 times, like, well, when you don't know what to do and the players aren't talking to each other or doing anything, that's when a monster attacks, right? So it has a purpose of just moving things along. But it can also have a purpose to the characters, and that can make it fun. When it has a point, like there's whether it's somebody guarding something that they need to get by or whatever. It's fun because their characters are invested in. It's not just a combat.
So I would say the way to incorporate fun into the combat is to, number one, you want to find a way to include all the characters. If you have got a non-violent player, like their character does not wish to harm another, well, then when you have combat, you want to incorporate something for that character to do. Mm-hmm. So you can have puzzles that need to be solved during the combat. You can have NPCs that need to be freed. Things that require environmental interaction for characters who want to be mentally challenged, or giving the players
that's super effective. Yeah, totally.
Not looking like, oh, I've got players who don't want to go down that direction. Like giving them, okay, well, this portal is going to keep spewing out monsters until you find a way to shut it down. And it could be the wizard has to go in and do our kind of stuff and move crystals around, or it could be something as simple as the barbarian needs to bring his maul down on top of the machine and crush it. Both options might be valid. You as the DM, you might not come with a solution. Just let the players try and see what happens.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's to just like drill down on what it's saying. It's like just be open to things like that. Like when we were playing that Spelljammer campaign, they were in the sugar dimension, and they were fighting chocolate duplicates of themselves, and there was a big double boiler of cosmic chocolate and blah blah blah. And Anthony was like, well, I want to reduce the size of the pot inside the pod, so it just falls in and ruins it. I'm like, that wasn't something I planned for. I not even 100% sure if that spell allows for that. I don't know if it says like a creature or whatever. I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome, and it was super fun. So, just being open to crazy stuff, like you said, whether it's just wanting to smash something. Even, I mean, you don't have even your two examples of like moving crystals around or smashing something. You might not have even prepped that part, right? Like where it's like, oh, if anybody smashes it, this happens. It's like, just go with it because it's cool, it's fun, it's memorable to think like, yeah, I remember when I just like leapt up and smashed that thing and caused whatever to happen. Or players are often inquisitive. I mean, it's fun to reward them if they said like, well, is there any sort of like mechanism controlling this thing, and just have them make a roll or something like, oh yeah, there's some strange crystals on the wall. That'd be fun for you and them. It certainly makes what you thought was just going to be like monster on party battle of attrition slogfest is all of a sudden this dynamic thing where there's impromptu puzzles and all sorts of stuff. That's a lot of fun for me as a DM when I do it too, as I'm sure it is for you.
Absolutely. The other thing to really look at is you want to incorporate the player's interesting abilities. If you are aware of your player's spell choices and class abilities, and give your players all time to truly shine, you are going to draw them in that much more. In the Those Bastards game, my sorcerer, I've got cantrips. They'll handle my blasties, and maybe every once in a while I'll choose a spell that does more damage. But the other spells, because sorcerers get so few, I want them to be fun. And I found spells that are like, yeah, this is cool, this is interesting. And I'm not going to give things away, but I've got suggestion, haste, fun one, incite greed. These are just fantastic things that I can just do, and it can greatly change the span of combat. And I've had a lot of fun with it. I look forward to many more sessions.
Yeah, that game is a lot of fun, and those combats are fast and fun for both us and our illustrious Dungeon Master Megan. So if you want an example of that in practice, go check it out because, yeah, I mean, we do a lot of those things. I'm going to get as, pared down as we were talking about earlier, but they're quick and they're very, they're great for pacing and they're exciting. And I usually feel like, and they're not like easy either. I must say, like, there's many times I'm like, oof, man, I got messed up there, but they're fun.
Yes, and I completely agree. They're a great DM, and Megan says like the campaign writes itself, and the characters are great, but it's a completely collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm. Of course,
we wouldn't have the great story if they didn't put it all together for us.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And have this wonderful environment and setting to interact with.
God, yeah. So when you want to incorporate fun, you want to look at all of those things, and every combat can be different. This one I'm going to put in a bunch of little things. Well, this is going to allow the area effect spells to crush things. It's going to allow your heavy hitters to go in and just mow through them like a lawnmower. Like that is a blast for characters to be like, oh, we're just going to pile these guys off the table. They're all dead.
That was going to be my follow-up too, with just combining fast and fun. I only wrote one thing: weaker creatures. And a lot of them have cool abilities too. Like as a DM, I mean, if you find a, I mean, you don't have to get super noodly with the calculating the challenge and everything, but it's like, I mean, if the players are 6th to 8th level and you take a handful of like, I don't know, CR3, 4 creatures, they'll probably be fine. And a lot of, I mean, I love when you come across like, that's a neat ability, or find 2 things that work together, like in all those monster BFFs that we do. Those are often pretty low level creatures individually, and just 2 of them, it's like they work together fun, and it kind of makes a story out of it too, and it lets the players feel like, yeah, we just, like you said, like mowed through those things that like Dave, I think, in one of his games had a bunch of chokers.
Yeah, that was against me.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, I'm just thinking like that's. I mean, they're very challenging, even because they do tough things.
We were like super high level, like
Oh, really?
kind of stuff. Like, and I totally myrtleated them, with a spell.
Yeah.
It wasn't until they killed our mount and did a whole bunch of damage. When you have
Mephits are fun. I mean, those are challenging because they blow up, and other things like that. Darklings.
Oh yeah, but if you look at things that have saving throws and force your players to make them, chances are somebody is going to, whatever the required save is, it's not going to be good for them, and that person's going to get hurt a whole lot.
Throw a bunch of gibbering mouthers at him. Those are nasty.
So like you've got the ability to space this out. Mm-hmm. So you've got the angle of lots of little things. You've got the angle of the single solo monster. You've got the angle of some kind of puzzle or interaction along with monsters. You've got monsters and hazards. Like all of these things wind up being different types of combat. And if over the course of a campaign, you're using all of these spaced out differently, no combat is going to feel like, it's one of these.
That's a great point. Yeah. Just try different things all the time. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, it's like being like YouTubers and stuff and making all this content. We are still like, players too. I mean, that's why, like you guys said a long time ago, it's like we talk about this stuff anyway. We just turn the camera on. It's fun. I mean, I started watching you guys because I wanted to try those things in my games, and I have, So
for again, I apologize for those who have heard this numerous times. Dave married my sister. He is legitimately my brother-in-law, and my sister has yelled at us numerous times that over the many years since the two of them have been dating, how many hours that Dave and I have spent on the phone talking about nerdy D&D stuff. So this is legitimately no joke. We have had these conversations.
Sure.
We have spent hours talking about D&D when it's not game night. I legitimately have.
We still do.
Have pulled out the books and, tried to figure out this is, that's, and the other things.
Mm-hmm. How strong? How much can you lift? How much can you carry? Right? How fast can I go?
I've always been, as far back as I can remember, a D&D nerd. I care.
Yeah.
I'm gonna nickel and dime and try to figure out my best way to do things. But it is legitimately, there. Mm-hmm. But I'm still not done with some other fun advice.
Sure.
Another thing you can do is something that I now truly treasure. I can look at all of these books behind me, but you know what? So can my players. So you know what they can't look at? I can't open up my head and let them look at my brain. So I frequently combined twist or just come up with new stuff. In my last game that I ran, I took a monster straight out of the monster manual, described it vastly differently, and gave it a couple tweaks, couple new abilities, and the players had no clue what they were fighting. Still don't, and I'm not going to say it, until after the campaign's over.
Yeah, that's fun to do and super easy to make things fun. Just from, like the freak out sort of. I took harpies once and just described them as they're basically like animated cloaks that had like bird legs coming out of them. Okay. They were just like flapping on the wind, and there was like two little glowing eyes in the shadows, and they were scared. And it was really fun and challenging. And they were just regular harpies. I don't even think they're that. But it might even be like CR quarter maybe or something.
Yeah.
Right.
But if your players, aren't veterans, they're not familiar with everything in the books. They're not trying to look at the books so that they know what to do, which I totally frown upon. But I know there's players out there that do it. Then it's not as important. Mm-hmm. But if you are like myself and you game with veterans that are used to, it's a mimic, or it's an animated rug.
Mimics are just fun though.
The bed is going to attack me. Oh God! Like it's great. It's fun to have these things, and when that character has never seen it before, it's still fun to be like, damn it, I fell for it again.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
Mimics, you never know, man. You just never know. Anything you touch might just stick to you and try to eat you. That's what's so fun about mimics, I think.
but at the same time, when you can take something and you describe it differently. Years ago, I ran an adventure on the channel, and I took a shambling mound, and I just
Great
described
creature.
it. Absolutely. I just described it as this writhing mass of tentacles that pulled itself out of the swamp. It's still in the same environment, but it looked vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanically, it was exactly the same. I literally ran it right out of the book.
Yeah.
But it was different in appearance, and the players didn't know how to react, which meant all of those things that they might try means, all right, well, it might get, the benefit of those spells that, a shambling mound might, which is just great. And I love that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
when you've got the ability to go down these roads, it changes the course of the game for everyone that's watching, because it's fun. So not watching, but playing.
Yeah.
Because they don't know, and it brings back that aha moment. It brings back those. Well, that was interesting. I'd never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to, most combats these days, despite my love of monster manuals and the fact that I've got a whole bunch here, I've probably got over half a dozen for 5e. It's still like, okay, I'm gonna still muck about and twist things because
sure.
That's my jam.
Yeah. So there was an interesting question there from Josiah again. It says, big dragons, are they as fun for the player as the DM? That's an interesting question. I would say, in my experience, yes and no, only because it's like you want them to be these like really impactful things, and sometimes I just feel like I'm not bringing the drama enough. Like I can't do like a really menacing voice and with conviction and stuff like that. So I suppose that quality of it's fun for me, but I feel like it could be more fun for the players when I use big dragons if I was like more build up and oomph behind it. Does that make sense? But at the same time, I like the idea. Like even when we played our team game before we were streaming, when I was running it, and I used one of the encounters from Out of the Box with the Golden Test.
Yes.
I kind of like part of me likes the idea that like even a powerful dragon, it's impactful when they show up, and you didn't fight it obviously, but that they're just around in the world, and it's not like this death sentence if you encounter one, basically.
So number one, it says big dragons, are they as fun for the player as the DM? So you have to look at exactly, what is the goal? Like, are you looking to have a dragon that is, there to be an impact, to remind the low level PCs that they live in a world where it is possible for this guy to just come out of the ground and.
Is that the big Chongus from WizKids?
This is a Chardolin from Rime of the Frost Maiden. That's one of the.
That's a cool mini.
He is fantastic. I love that thing. It's actually quite sizable. It's on an 8x8 base, so he's got.
It almost looks like a xenomorph head.
Yeah, to some extent it does, but it totally has that kind of like that Hellforges kind of like orange yellow lighting in between.
Yeah.
So
that is very cool. Yeah, and I'm sure you already have several ideas. Like it could be this or this.
Oh, there are many things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
WizKids has been putting out quite a large number of amazing dragons as of late. So you mentioned big dragons, and I gotta pull out the new ones.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten as much airtime. So that's the Sapphire Dragon.
That thing, it looks really cool.
Which those cool stats color. are already in D&D Beyond. So,
What is it? What's his breath weapon?
For the Sapphire?
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could go check, but I think people would rather hear us talk.
Sure. I didn't know if you just knew.
I didn't. I don't have it memorized, unfortunately.
Sure, that's cool. Hey, do we have any things that we have to?
I have no business.
Okay.
We the giveaway winner. He responded, and he's in
nice.
I've already.
These hauls you're putting together are just incredible lately.
The what?
The hauls you're putting together.
Well,
I mean, man.
I'm trying to reduce some of this this pile.
You hear that, people? We have so much stuff to give away. There has never been a better time.
It has been growing for a while, and when things keep coming in, it's like, okay, is this a shelf, or is this a a giveaway pile? And I try to make sure that things are divided nicely.
It's fun. It's fun giving that stuff away.
But we used to, it used to be like, $30 to $50. We started off, it was just a book,
Yeah. Now it's like at least $50.
It's like typically $50 to $200.
Yeah.
So
closer to the 200.
Yes.
So there's a question in the chat. It's nice, and Frost Maiden is the new online focus and beyond. Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden is the next campaign adventure that's coming out. When does that come out? September?
I
don't remember.
So.
I want to say September.
But that'd be pretty cool. That is Tally. He's actually a player in Dave's new game that I am thoroughly enjoying.
Is that their first person that's their first time playing D&D?
No. I think it's been around for a while.
One of the players in your party is, and it sounded pretty fun.
I was
UNT.
The monk, Pratima.
I just remember that was UNT.
Okay.
But that sounded pretty cool. Yeah, that campaign sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, it's actually one of the crafts that I'm working on is my re-envisioned steel defender.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm playing a lizard folk artificer, but I've gotten permission from the illustrious DM to say, rather than have the focus of the artifice be like smithing and tinkering, but to focus on see, it's like I'm not the noob. We gamed with Tally, I think, back in 2015 at
okay.
But Dave's got a better memory for that than I do.
Sure.
But the lizard folk has cunning artisan, so he makes things out of bone and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, can that be my artifice? So like he's got
that's really neat take on it.
And I've needed to create another new tool set, and I'm shocked that it doesn't exist. But scrimshaw tools are not a thing.
That's like bone carving and stuff.
Bone carving, yep. And like,
hey, maybe they will be in Rime of the Frostman. They like their knucklehead trout up there.
It is well, I mean, in the Icewind Dale trilogy, the halfling character that is
Regis
does.
Mm-hmm. So, I think there's like a knucklehead trout fishing contest and stuff in the Rime of the Frostmaiden and some other interactive ways with the scrimshaw.
But I have to say that the Artificer Battlesmith.
Yeah, that's a really fun take on it. I think that's cool.
It's a blast. But
that game sounds like a lot of fun. I must say, when those bastards, wraps up this season of it, I wouldn't mind playing, having Dave run a game in his Land of the Lost sort of setting, because that does sound pretty fun to me with dinosaurs and all this reptilian stuff. I think that'd be really cool.
Well, I mean, if you can convince Dave to take up the next slot, I think somebody's pushing for the quest. But we'll see.
That would be fun too. I mean, it's fun playing D&D and RPGs with you folks.
Oh, so. Completely. Sure. But thematically, I loved the concept.
Yeah.
As I put this guy together, I realized I made a pretty ridiculous thing. In third level character, I'm wearing scale mail, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So like not the best medium armor I can get. And I've got a 19 AC. My primary attack is Frostbite, which gives the attacker disadvantage on their next attack. And the steel defender's reaction is to cause a creature that's attacking to attack with disadvantage.
Do you flavor frostbite as an actual bite from his lizard folk? Hungry Jaws.
I do not. I actually do. It is a spell. So he actually usually, walks around with his carving knife out. He's got this big old meaty shield and then this itty bitty knife. It's like, so he instills it with cold energy and flicks it at them.
Maybe cultivates. What's that stuff that's like freezing cold when you touch it? It's like a dungeon hazard. It's like some kind of mold or something. Was it brown mold?
I don't remember the molds off.
I think it's brown mold. It is like icy cold. That's the stuff that I think people would say would destroy the elemental plane of fire. It's like kind of one of those like crazy D&D tropes because it just like absorbs fire and grows.
So if
interesting, there's a campaign starter for you.
Oh, of course.
The plane of fire is consumed by brown mold.
But it's fun. I love Skeggs. He's a great character to play, and it's a fun group. So
and I know you've wanted to play lizard folk for a while. You like lizard folk a lot, so it's probably nice to get to indulge that.
And for the first time in a very long time, I have opted to go with a non-good character. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's neutral.
Okay.
So he's got goals and he's got things, but for the most part, it's he doesn't have as much compunction about certain things. There was a undead dragonborn, and this dude is like obsessed with bones. And usually he takes like wrist and ankle bones, knee joints, what have you, from non-sentient creatures because he's got some respect. But this dragonborn was undead. It had claws and what have you, and he's like, "Oh, that's interesting." So while they're trying to examine and loot and whatnot, he walks over and he just slowly starts cutting the wrist, break, puts it in his bag. And just get some looks from everybody else. But then I've got the cool artificer infusion of I'm just going to give off this scent of choice. So despite carrying around bones and dead things, he always smells like a rustic campfire.
Cool. Wow. So yeah, I actually am. I'm glad we had this talk tonight. That fast and fun narrative skill-based combat sounded pretty intriguing. I'm looking forward to exploring that idea further.
If you're not signed up for the Nerducky the newsletter, you can certainly do so because as is typical, we expand this topic into the newsletter. And I will be exploring, that particular to try and come up with, a more streamlined mechanic, putting it down. It might be a beta version, but, hey, it's something to put down on paper and get people out there to explore. I love the idea of having combat be narrative and turning it into a hazard and giving the players agency to describe how it all unfolds.
Yeah. Especially for a one-on-one game, like was it Crazy Hermit DM that mentioned that earlier? Yeah, that seems really useful for something like that because it sort of turns down the danger dial a little bit to a more controllable level.
Absolutely. And then, when it comes to making things fun, as we said, change it up. If you run the same style of combat over and over again, it's overwhelming odds versus the players every single time. It's not as much fun. You want sometimes the combat to be, hit, let the players hit them hard, have them get this overwhelming victory, and other times that utterly crushing defeat. And how do you survive this? And I've had all of them. I've had combats where us as the players, we get the ambush, we beat them on initiative. So the entire party gets 2 full rounds before the enemies go. At that point in time, it's over, man. It was no loss. It was no. They couldn't do anything to us.
I have to say real quick, the fastest, funnest combat I've ever been in maybe was just a couple of weeks ago on those bastards when we got the initiative on everybody in the room, and everybody in the party rolled a crit. That was not only astronomically unheard of, very fast, but that was a lot of fun, narratively and mechanically.
I did the math on that.
Oh, really?
I don't remember it,
Okay.
but it is astronomical.
That was crazy.
If I say it, I'm sure it's going to come out wrong.
Sure.
But I want to say it was like 1 in 3.2 million. The odds of 5 criticals going off all at once.
Yeah,
it was
that meant something. That meant something. Hey, speaking of the newsletter too, another fast way was in last week's, which we talked about Minions, which is on the website and I posted. So in the DM screen, it might be the reincarnated one or whatever. It might be in the DMG too, but there's a little chart of just like damage by tier, right? And maybe you just want to have and I sort of broke that down of just like maybe you just have your minions do like that much damage. And you can describe it however you want. I go check it out on the website. It's called Minions. D&D Ideas Minions in 5e D&D. But speaking of the newsletter too, when you sign up for it, just for one last plug, you do get an exclusive coupon for $9.99 that you can use in the store on anything you want, including out of the box or any of the PDFs we talked about or whatever, something that you just explore. It looks like Ted has disappeared from video. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, now you popped back in. It went black for a second. But yeah, I mean, you can get $10 off out of the box. You can get any of the dozen. I think we got like 40 PDFs over there, maybe. And any one of them you could get for that instead of a couple bucks to spare.
We've got quite a lot of cool stuff that we've put together over the years.
Mm-hmm.
We got more ideas that keep a flowing. We've got lots of things that are coming up down the pike.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask people too is we did add. So speaking of our newsletter again, we added recently a community spotlight section, and I'm just looking for like any stories from your games that are maybe inspired by one of our videos, or you ran one of our encounters or products, or a post on the website. And there's a pin post over on Facebook, or just tag us anywhere. And if you share photos or anything, and we're just sort of picking through those each week and sharing them on the newsletter just because it's cool. See what people are playing around their gaming tables.
So yeah, look forward to hearing all of that if you want to send those things our way.
Yeah, just need somebody shared like a really cool picture of their adventuring party miniatures this week, and I don't know, and like what they're doing in their campaigns. It's neat.
Yeah, I've actually done some stuff with miniatures myself. For those of you who aren't aware, I've done quite a number of posts for Hero Forge, and I've been playing around with their color tools, and I have fallen in love.
Man,
to say the least. So there might be some Hero Forge, those bastards pictures being shared in the somewhat near future with some fun things that have been played around with.
Yeah, those are, man, that's so fun. I mean, even if you're not going to print them out sometime, I mean, I've made minis just to like take the screenshot of it and be like, yeah, this is what they'd look like if they were, if I had a print. What about drawings you inspired?
I did one for Galason, and
yeah.
Megan was like, that is exactly what I picture.
Oh, really?
The smug smile.
Nice.
I was like, that's amazing. I nailed it.
Yeah, that game's so much fun.
Speaking of which, if you want to check us out, Those Bastards will be, airing tomorrow night. We at 10 or we at 11?
This will be episode 10, so we really need to figure out what we're playing next and everything.
Yeah, so we're gonna, spoiler alert, we're looking at, doing around a dozen episodes and before we move on to something else. But I imagine the excitement and the fun of Those Bastards, won't be too long before those interesting people will be back.
A lot of the games I play anymore, I often think of as like the funnest games I've ever played. So I'd imagine it's just partly, you know, just because we've played so many games and just trying different things, like we've been talking about all the time in our videos, just trying new things. And this one, it's like I've never known as much about a character I've played or the other people in the party as this game. It's very fun like that. It's very storybook quality. I enjoy that, and they have a lot of fast and fun combats in that game. So
With
we are
that,
right up on 9 o'clock. Sorry, go ahead.
So with that, I'm showing it's 9 o'clock. You know, we will be back tomorrow night with those bastards, 8 o'clock, right here on this channel. You've got, you know, of course, all of the daily live chats with Dave. Do not know who is scheduled for tomorrow.
I believe it's a Geek and Sundry writer.
Okay, cool. You know, and you know, we've got the Monday, Wednesday, Friday video still flowing over on the main channel. So plenty of Nerdarchy content to keep you appeased. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy. Nailed it.